Apache woman escaped after her father sold her. A cowboy gave her a place to hide. Wild West story. The sun was just rising over the wide desert when Nantai woke up. The early light painted the land in soft gold, but her heart felt heavy and dark. She sat quietly outside her family's small hut, listening to the wind move through the dry grass. This land was all she had ever known. The hills, the dust, the sky that seemed to go on forever, they were part of her, just like her name and her people. Nante was only 16, but life had already taught her many hard lessons. Her mother had died when she was young, and since then she had helped her father with everything, gathering water, cooking, caring for her younger brothers, and keeping the small fire alive at night. She never complained. In her tribe, children learned early that survival came before comfort. Her father, Chogan, had once been a strong and proud man. He was known as a good hunter and a brave warrior. But years of drought, hunger, and fear had changed him. The animals were harder to find, and the land no longer gave what it once did. Traders from distant towns came more often now, offering goods in exchange for things the tribe could not afford to lose. Each visit made the elders uneasy, and each visit left the people poorer. That morning, Chogan would not look at his daughter. Nantai noticed it right away. He sat by the fire, staring into the flames, as if searching for answers there. His hands shook slightly, and his face looked older than she remembered. When she placed a bowl of food near him, he didn't thank her. He didn't even touch it. "Father?" she said softly. He flinched at the sound of her voice. For a moment, it seemed like he wanted to speak, but the words stayed trapped inside him. He only nodded and told her to go help her brothers. Nante obeyed, but a strange feeling twisted in her chest. Something was wrong. By midday, dust appeared on the horizon. A rider was coming. The tribe grew quiet as the man approached. He was not one of them. His clothes were clean, his boots strong, and a small smile sat on his face, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. He dismounted slowly, looking around as if he owned the place. The elder stepped forward, but he pushed past them, heading straight for Chogan. Nantai watched from a distance, her hands tightening around the basket she held. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see her father's shoulders sagged, as if a great weight had been placed on him. The man pulled out a small pouch and opened it. Something shiny caught the sunlight. Silver. Her breath caught in her throat. The man glanced in her direction, and their eyes met for just a second. But his gaze was cold and sharp, like a knife. Nantai felt her skin crawl. She turned away quickly, her heart beating too fast. When the man left, the pouch of silver stayed behind. That night the camp felt different. The air was thick with silence. No one laughed, no one sang. The fire burned low, and even the children sensed the fear that hung over the people. Nantai sat near her father, waiting for him to speak, but he remained quiet, staring into nothing. Finally, when the others had gone to sleep, he called her name. "Nantai," he whispered. She moved closer to him, kneeling beside the fire. His eyes were red, and his face was wet with tears. She had never seen her father cry before. Fear wrapped around her like a cold blanket. "Father, what is it?" she asked. His hands trembled as he reached for her face, touching her cheek as if trying to remember her. "I have failed you," he said. His voice broke. Her heart pounded. "I don't understand." He looked away, shame flooding his face. "I made a deal," he said slowly. "A deal I cannot undo." The world seemed to stop. Nantai felt dizzy. "What deal?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Chogan closed his eyes. "Tomorrow, you will go with that man." The words didn't make sense at first. Nantai shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. "Go where?" "Away," he said, "to the town." A sharp pain filled her chest. "Why?" He couldn't answer her. He only bowed his head and pressed his hands into the dirt. That was when she knew. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You sold me," she said quietly. Shogun cried openly now.
I did it to save the others, he said. They would have taken your brothers.
They would have taken the land. I had no choice. Nantai stood up, her legs shaking. Her whole body felt like it was burning. You always had a choice, she said. You just chose the easy one. Her father reached for her, but she stepped back. In that moment, she no longer saw the man who raised her. She saw a stranger, a broken man who had given up. Black, she ran. She ran past the sleeping huts, past the dying fire, past the life she had known. Her feet carried her into the dark desert, guided only by the stars. The wind cut against her skin, and her breath came in painful gasps. But she didn't stop. Fear pushed her forward, faster than her legs should have allowed. Behind her was a future she did not choose. Ahead of her was danger, hunger, and the unknown. But it was still hers. She ran until her lungs burned and her feet bled. When she finally collapsed behind a group of rocks, the sky was already changing color. The night was fading, and morning was coming. Nantai pressed her face into the dirt, trying to quiet her sobs. She had nothing with her, no food, no water, no blanket. But she still had her name. She still had her will. And that was enough. As the first light touched the desert, Nantai lifted her head and looked toward the endless land before her. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew one thing for certain. She would never go back. The desert was silent when Nantai opened her eyes. For a moment she did not remember where she was. The ground was hard beneath her, and the cold of the night still clung to her skin. Then everything came rushing back. Her father's words, the silver, the stranger, the choice she had made to run. Her heart started to beat fast, and she sat up quickly, looking around. The rocks where she had hidden were still there, tall and rough, casting long shadows as the sun slowly rose. The sky was soft pink and gold, beautiful and calm, as if nothing bad had happened at all. But Nantai knew better. Beauty in the desert could hide danger. Her mouth was dry, and her stomach hurt from hunger. She had nothing with her. No water, no food, not even a small knife. She wrapped her arms around herself and took a deep breath. Crying would not help her now. She had to move. She stood slowly, her legs stiff and sore. The ground burned her feet as the sun climbed higher. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she kept going. She followed the path of the rising sun, hoping it would lead her somewhere, anywhere. That was not behind her. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time felt strange in the open land. The air became hot and heavy. The wind disappeared, and the silence pressed against her ears. Nantai's thoughts began to wander. She remembered her mother's voice, the songs she used to sing at night. She remembered her brothers laughing, chasing each other through the dust. The memories hurt, but they also gave her strength. She walked until her vision started to blur. Her head felt light, and her knees shook. She knew she had to find shade or water soon, or she would fall and never get up again. Just as fear began to take over, she saw something in the distance, a small group of trees. Hope filled her chest. She forced herself to move faster, ignoring the pain. When she reached the trees, she nearly cried with relief. The shade felt like a gift. She collapsed under the branches, breathing hard, pressing her face against the cool ground. There was no water, but there were small berries growing on one of the bushes. Nantai hesitated. Her mother had taught her which ones were safe. These were the right kind. She ate a few slowly, thankful for even this small mercy. After resting, she listened carefully. The desert had a voice if you paid attention, and that voice now carried a warning. Hooves. Her body froze. The sound was far away, but it was real. Someone was riding through the land. She held her breath, pressing herself against the ground. The sound grew louder, then faded again. Maybe they had passed her. Maybe not. Fear pushed her back to her feet. She could not stay in one place for long. If they were looking for her, they would search the open land first, and then the trees. She moved again, this time staying low, walking through dry grass and rocks, choosing paths that would hide her tracks. The sun was high now. Heat pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. Her skin burned, and her lips cracked. She felt dizzy again, but she refused to stop. Each step was a promise to herself. I am still alive. As the day stretched on, the land began to change. The open desert slowly turned into rolling hills. She followed a narrow trail, barely visible, but worn by animals and time. It felt safer than the open ground. Then she saw it, a cattle trail. Her heart skipped. Cattle trails meant people. People meant danger, or help. She didn't know which. She hid behind a hill, watching carefully. In the dust, she saw tracks, horses, boots, and cattle hooves. This place was used often. She was weak now. Her body was shaking, and her vision came and went. She tried to turn away, but her legs failed her. She stumbled forward and fell near the edge of the trail, her hands scraping against the dirt. Pain shot through her arms, but she didn't feel it for long. Darkness closed in. She was half awake when she heard a voice. "Hey, are you alive?" It was a man's voice, deep, careful, not loud. She tried to move, but couldn't. Footsteps came closer. She felt a shadow fall over her, blocking the sun. The man knelt down, his boots inches from her face. She forced her eyes open and saw him, a cowboy, dusty and worn, with kind eyes and a tired face. He looked at her like a human being, not a thing. "Easy," he said gently. "You're safe. Safe." The word felt strange. She wanted to believe it, but fear still lived in her bones. She tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. He took off his hat and placed it beside her, then slowly reached for a canteen. "Drink," he said. "Just a little." She hesitated, then nodded. He lifted her head carefully and let a few drops of water touch her lips. The water felt like life itself. Tears filled her eyes as she swallowed. "There you go," he said softly. She wanted to ask who he was, what he wanted, if he would take her back. But she was too tired. The world spun, and her eyes closed again. Before everything went dark, she felt his arm lift her gently, as if she weighed nothing at all. Nantai woke slowly, as if coming back from a long, deep sleep. At first she thought she was dreaming. The ground beneath her was soft, not hard like the desert. The air smelled different, too. Warm, clean, and safe. She opened her eyes carefully. She was lying on a simple bed inside a small wooden room. Sunlight came through a narrow window, touching the floor like a gentle hand. A blanket covered her body, and for a moment she panicked, trying to sit up. But her body felt weak, and her head spun. "Easy," a voice said from nearby. She turned her head and saw the cowboy sitting on a chair beside the wall. He had removed his hat, and his brown hair was messy from the long day. He didn't move toward her, didn't try to touch her. He only watched her with calm eyes, like someone waiting for a frightened animal to trust him. "You're safe," he said again slowly, as if the words mattered. "You passed out on the trail. I brought you here." Nantai pulled the blanket closer to her chest. Her eyes searched the room. There was a small table, a chair, a water bucket, and a door that led outside. No chains, no locked windows, no guards. Still, fear lived in her heart. She had learned not to trust quickly. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice rough. "My ranch," the man answered. "It's not much, but it's quiet. No one comes here unless they're lost." She studied him closely. He was tall, but not frightening. His clothes were worn, his boots dusty, and his face carried the lines of someone who worked hard and slept little. He looked like a man who knew loneliness well. "I'm Ethan," he said. "You don't have to tell me your name if you don't want to." She was silent for a moment. Then she whispered, "Nantai." He nodded once, as if the name mattered. "All right, Nantai." He stood up slowly and walked to the door. "There's some soup outside. Eat when you're ready." "I'll be in the barn." He left the door open when he went out. That surprised her more than anything else. After a while, she pushed herself up and carefully swung her legs over the side of the bed. The room stayed steady this time. She walked to the table, where a bowl of soup waited, still warm. She ate slowly, each spoonful giving her strength. When she finished, she stepped outside. The ranch was small and quiet, surrounded by hills and open land. A barn stood a short distance away, and a few horses grazed nearby. There were no other people, no town, no noise, just wind, animals, and open sky. Ethan was working near the barn, fixing a broken fence. He looked up when he saw her but didn't stop working. "You should rest," he said.
"I can help,"
she replied. He shook his head. "Later. You need strength first." She nodded and sat on a wooden step near the house, watching him work. She noticed how he moved carefully, like someone who didn't want to waste energy or words. He worked until the sun began to lower, then finally stopped and wiped his hands on his pants. "You can stay here tonight," he said, "and tomorrow too if you want." "Why?" she asked quietly. He thought for a moment. "Because someone helped me once," he said. That's all. She didn't ask more. Some answers didn't need words. That night she slept deeply. No dreams, no fear, just rest. When she woke again, the world felt lighter. Days passed in silence and simple routines. Nantai helped with cooking, cleaning, and feeding the animals. Ethan showed her how to care for the horses and where to find water. They spoke little, but their silence felt peaceful, not heavy. For the first time in her life, she was not being told what to do. One evening, as the sky turned orange and purple, she sat outside and watched the sun disappear. Ethan joined her, sitting a few steps away. "They're looking for you," he said suddenly. Her heart stopped.
"Who? Men on horses passed near the trail today. They asked questions."
He looked at her carefully. I didn't answer. Fear rushed through her again.
"They'll come back,"
she whispered. "Maybe," he said, "but this place is hidden, and I won't give you away." She looked at him, her eyes shining. "Why would you risk that?" He met her gaze. "Because no one should be owned," he said simply. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not cry. Instead, she nodded. That night, Ethan showed her a hiding place beneath the barn floor. It was dark and narrow, but safe. He lifted the loose boards and helped her down. "If they come," he said, "you stay here. Don't make a sound. I'll handle the rest." She nodded, her hands shaking. The next morning, dust rose on the horizon. Men were coming. Ethan stood tall near the fence as 3 riders approached. Their eyes searched the land, sharp and hungry. "We're looking for someone," one of them said. Ethan shook his head. "No one here but me." They didn't believe him. They moved closer, looking around, walking toward the barn. Below the floor, Nantai held her breath. Her heart beat so loudly she was sure they could hear it. Dust fell from above as Boots walked over her hiding place. One step closer, and she would be found. But after a long, terrifying moment, the footsteps moved away. The men left angry and empty-handed. When everything was quiet again, Ethan lifted the boards and helped her out. She could barely stand, but she was free, for now. The ranch felt different after the riders left. The wind still moved the grass, the animals still ate and slept, and the sun still rose and fell. But something had changed. Fear had found the place, and it did not want to leave. Nantai could feel it in her chest every time she stepped outside. She listened more carefully now, watched the hills longer, and jumped at every sound. Even the horses seemed nervous, lifting their heads when the wind carried a strange noise. She knew the men would return. People who hunt do not stop after one try. Ethan knew it too, even though he didn't say it. That night he sat by the small fire outside the house, sharpening a tool. The light of the flames danced across his face, showing lines of worry that hadn't been there before. Nantai sat nearby, wrapping her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "They won't give up," she said softly. "No," Ethan replied. "They won't." Silence followed. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. "I don't want to bring danger to you," she said. "I can leave." Ethan looked at her sharply.
No, he said more firmly than before. You won't survive out there alone.
Not again. She lowered her eyes, ashamed. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. He sighed and set the tool down. You didn't ask for this. None of it. And I won't turn my back on you now. His words filled her with warmth and fear at the same time. She nodded, unable to speak. The next morning, Ethan began to prepare. He fixed weak parts of the fence, moved supplies closer to the house, and showed Nantai where to hide if the riders returned. He also gave her a small bag with food, water, and a blanket.
If things go wrong, he said, you run toward the hills.
Don't look back. Her hands shook as she took the bag. And you? I'll make sure they follow me, he said. No, she said quickly. I won't leave you. He smiled, but it was a sad one. Sometimes survival means running. She held the bag close, her heart breaking at the thought of losing the one person who had protected her. By afternoon, the sky turned heavy and gray. The air felt thick, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Then, in the distance, dust began to rise. They're back, Nante whispered. Ethan stepped outside and stood near the fence, calm and steady. Nantai moved toward the barn, her legs heavy with fear. 3 riders came into view. This time, they did not slow down. Their horses moved fast, their faces hard. You lied to us, one of them shouted. Ethan didn't move. I told you the truth. No one here but me. They dismounted and began to search, pushing past him. One of them walked toward the barn. Nantai slipped into her hiding place beneath the floor, pressing her body into the dirt. She could hear everything. Boots on wood, voices, horses, breathing. Her hands covered her mouth to stop any sound from escaping. A board above her lifted slightly. Light poured in. Her heart stopped. She's here, a voice said. Before anything else could happen, Ethan's voice rang out. That's enough. There was shouting, then a struggle. The men rushed toward him. Nantai's body shook as she listened, helpless and trapped. Dust filled the air. A horse screamed. Someone fell. Then silence. Slowly, carefully, the board was lifted again. Ethan's face appeared, dirty and bruised but alive. Go, he whispered. Now. She climbed out, tears falling freely. Come with me. I can't, he said. Not yet. She grabbed his hand. Please. He squeezed it once. Run. She turned and ran toward the hills, her feet barely touching the ground. Behind her she heard shouting again, then the sound of horses moving the opposite way. Ethan had done what he promised. He had led them away. She ran until her lungs burned and the world blurred. When she finally collapsed among the rocks, the sun was sinking low. The sky was red like fire. Hours passed. The cold came. The stars appeared. Then, in the distance, she saw a single figure walking toward her. Ethan. She stood, her legs weak. He reached her and fell to his knees, exhausted but smiling. It's over, he said softly. She helped him up and together they stood under the open sky. For the first time since she ran from her past, the fear began to loosen its grip. The desert was still dangerous, but she was no longer alone. The night felt calmer than all the others before it. The wind was soft, the stars were bright, and the desert finally seemed to rest. Nantai and Ethan sat near a small fire hidden between rocks. They did not speak for a long time. Words were not needed. They were both tired in a deep way that sleep alone could not fix. Ethan's face was still marked with dust and small cuts, but his eyes were peaceful. Nantai watched the fire, thinking about everything that had happened. The escape, the fear, the running, the hiding. It felt like a lifetime had passed, even though it had only been days. They won't come back, Ethan said quietly at last.
How do you know? She asked.
He looked toward the dark hills. People like them only chase easy paths. Once things become hard, they look for someone else.
Nantai nodded slowly.
She wanted to believe him. Her body still remembered fear, but her heart was learning something new, hope. When the fire burned low, Ethan stood. "We can't go back to the ranch," he said. "It's no longer safe, but I know a place." She looked up at him. "Where?" "A mission settlement 2 days from here," he said. "They help people start new lives, no questions asked." The words made her chest tighten. A new life. The idea felt strange and beautiful at the same time. They traveled at dawn. Ethan gave her a horse, and he walked beside her most of the way, guiding the path through hills and dry riverbeds. The journey was slow but steady. Along the way, he taught her how to read the land, how to find water, how to follow safe paths, how to know when danger was near. Each lesson felt like a gift. At night, they shared stories by the fire. Ethan spoke of his past, a small farm that failed, a family he lost, a long road that led him to the quiet ranch. Nantai spoke of her mother's songs and her brother's laughter. They shared pain, but they also shared strength. On the third morning they saw it, a small settlement with white walls and open gates. People moved quietly, working, helping one another, living without fear. Nantai's eyes filled with tears. "This is it," Ethan said. They stopped at the edge. For a moment, neither of them moved. "I don't know how to thank you," Nantai said. He smiled gently. "You already did. You survived." She stepped down from the horse and stood in front of him. Her voice was strong now, steady. "I will remember you, always." He nodded. "And I will remember you, not as someone I saved, but as someone who saved herself." She walked toward the gates, each step lighter than the last. At the entrance, she turned back once. Ethan was already walking away. The sun rose higher, warming her face. People welcomed her, gave her water, food, and a place to rest. For the first time, she slept without fear. Weeks passed, then months. Nantai learned new skills, helped others, and slowly built a life that belonged only to her. She chose a new name, one that meant freedom. She laughed again. She sang again. Sometimes, at night, she looked toward the distant hills and thought of the cowboy who gave her a place to hide. She knew she would never see him again, but she also knew that some people walk into your life only to show you the way forward. One evening as the sun set, she stood on a small hill near the settlement and smiled. She was no longer running. She was home.